Welcome to the Soar Above Success podcast, where you'll learn how to soar above your competition. And now, your host, Yuri Vilk.
Hey everybody, this is Yuri with the Soar Above Success podcast, and I have a very special guest with me today. His name is Dr. Rick Brinkman. Now, Dr. Rick Brinkman has been in public practice since 1980, touring nationally and abroad, performing keynotes and training in 18 countries. He is a co-author or author of 5 McGraw Hill books, including the international bestseller, Dealing with People You Can't Stand, How to Bring Out the Best in People at Their Worst, has sold over 2 million copies and has been translated in over 25 languages. He is also the co-author of Dealing with Relatives, Bringing Out the Best in Family, and Life by Design, Bringing Out the Best in Yourself and Love Thy Customer. His clients have included the astronauts at NASA, LucasFilm, the Department of Defense, Sony Pictures, Adobe, Wells Fargo, Lockheed Martin, and many others. He has been featured guest on CNN and is a frequent communication expert for publications such as the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Oprah Magazine, and USA Today. Rick, welcome to the show. I'm very happy for you to be here, and I'm very excited for you to be here today on the Soar Above Success podcast.
It's good to be here, and it's synchronistic you mentioning all those publications because we were just cleaning out a shelf and we found the Cosmopolitan from a number of years ago where I was the bitch tip of the month.
And what was the bitch tip of the month?
The bitch tip was about when somebody's, standing too close to you, like in a line, and they're breathing down your neck, and I say you want to sneeze into your arm, wipe your nose, and turn around and go, boy, this swine flu is a bitch.
That's awesome. So you actually wrote that piece for the Cosmopolitan then?
Yeah, they called me, and I had done some other things for them.
And I'm sure that was a pleasure to write. Wow, what a great experience, especially when you're going back through everything that you've done and looking at all your work, and I'm sure that was really uplifting to pull something like that up.
It's been fun how this topic of people can't stand is so universal. I mean,
yeah.
The world can't stand each other. I guess that's why it's so many languages, and that's the bad news.
It's good and bad.
Business, but
yep.
Yeah, it seems to be a universal issue, and it crosses all cultures and country boundaries and genders, etc., generations too.
Yeah, it seems like it's a human quality, and it doesn't matter where you are in the world. It's a universal truth, sort of like emotions are emotions. You can't stop them, and there's a lot of universal signals that happen that trigger certain behaviors in people. And now I know I have your book right here, Rick, and this is an excellent read for anybody who hasn't checked this book out or has somebody that they absolutely can't stand. This book is for you. It really helps you in understanding people's psychology and helping you deal with those situations where you otherwise wouldn't have a clue of how to approach it. Now, I know you've written a ton of material, Rick, and you've been on multiple shows and you've been around the world. Today I want to discuss the Dealing with People You Can't Stand book. And what was your inspiration for it? Why did you write it?
Well, my co-author and partner at the time, we were working together. We couldn't stand each other, so we decided to write a book about it. I mean, there's a truth to that and not. What happened was, long story short, we're naturopathic physicians, holistically trained, but our course diverted into, it initially went to study communication so we could be more effective influencing our patients. But what happened was we got the tools to be natural counselors, and because we were taught to look at the whole picture, we started digging deeper into people's lives. I remember I had this woman had arthritis. She tried everything, nothing had really worked. So what do I have to lose? I figure I'll pry into her life. Although I didn't pry, friends pry, health professionals probe. And I find her husband works for the government. He's flying back and forth to Washington, D.C. each week. She's hated that job for 20 years, hasn't expressed it, wants to support him. He was supposed to take an early retirement. He decided against that. She suppressed that too. When minor upsets would occur, she wouldn't deal with it. They only had 2 days a week together. She would suppress that. Now, if you suppress too much somebody you care about, it's going to build up a barrier. So my prescription to her is to teach her how you share upset without the other person feeling attacked. And when she did this, 30 days later, symptoms were gone, and they stayed gone. And I got what's known in the medical business as a major case of trout mouth, when you look like this. And next thing I know, I'm doing more and more counseling, communication seminars. Long story short, 30 years later, it's 4,000 programs, 18 countries.
So that one situation sort of sparked, and that was the inspiration for this whole sequence of events that occurred right after that. Now, I know you really dive deep into these personality types and the types of people that you encounter on a normal basis. Can you briefly go over some of those personality types? I know you mentioned there's 13 in the book. You don't have to go over all of them, but give us an example of what some of them are like.
Well, first of all, the very important distinction if you want to be successful with people is let go of the idea of personality.
Okay.
Personality types, and think more in terms of behavior. And here's the difference. Behavior is fluid. It's constantly changing. 1 minute a person's normal, then they blow up their tantrum, then they withdraw and they're quiet, then they're normal, then they're whining, then they're something else. And they change according to these two factors: context, where are we, what's going on, and relationship, who are we with. So you could know somebody who seems to be a bully most of the time at work. You wouldn't believe what a wimp they're going to turn into in a different context or in a different relationship. My wife would tell you she has to come to a seminar to hear me speak, because in most social situations, I'll be a nothing person. And this is true. Those are people with children. Your child comes back from the neighbor says, "Oh, how polite and helpful." What, my child? Different contexts, different relationships, right. Different behaviors. So here's the thing. We as human beings can only pay attention to 7, give or take 2 things at any one time consciously.
Sure.
You be aware of what I just said, what you think about it, how it feels to sit there, temperature in the room, sounds around you. If we hear crash, there goes our attention, it drops out.
Sure.
So it's like a spotlight. All right, so we have a part of our brainstem, our reticular activating system, and one of its functions is radar. So if you get married, you see everyone getting married. If you have children, it looks like a baby boom. If you're interested in a certain car, there it goes again.
Yeah.
So we've all had that experience. So if I think somebody's personality is negative, guess what I notice? Oh, there they are again. Told you so. I knew nothing would work. I mean, I could give you the strategy for negativity, and you could implement it, and you could be having quite an impact. Half the time the person is not negative, but you know what? You will not even notice it. And that's the key here. We as human beings are programmed to selectively sort our perceptions to be right about whatever we believe in the first place. We don't want to be right that people are difficult. What we want to really be right about is we can influence their behavior. Sure. And so really personality is way too big of a generalization to be functionally useful, because it'd be everybody how they are in every situation, in every relationship in their entire life. So behavior, and it may seem a subtle difference, but to your viewers and listeners, think behavior. That's a big first step.
Okay. So, and that makes a lot of sense, because we're always trying to classify personality types and fit them into this like paradigm, and it doesn't always work. And you can be identified as a certain type either on one type of model, like the DISC model, or in a different type of personality test, and it assesses you and gives you this sort of criteria. And this is who you are. This is what you do.
Yeah.
But not all the time. There's always those exceptions to the rule. And you don't always behave in the way that's in line with your personality type. In addition to that, not every situation brings out that personality type, and you might even outgrow that piece. So I definitely hear what you're saying, in that it's better to focus on behavior.
Yeah, what are you dealing with right now?
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And how can you adapt to those situations and pivot in order to make it work?
Yeah.
Very good stuff. Now, in the book, you discuss something called a lens of understanding, and this is a really key piece to understanding the rest of these behavior types. What is the lens of understanding? All
right. So if you imagine, I don't know if there's going to be a PDF or what, but if you imagine a circle with a green zone, we call that the cooperation zone.
Sure.
And we have 4 basic intents. We want to get things done. We want to get things done right. We want to get along with people, and we want to get appreciated by people. Now, put yourself in your own shoes. Have you ever needed to get something done? Of course. What happens when people want to get things done is they are going to focus on the task at hand. So they're more task focused, and they're going to push forward and become more assertive. That's what makes it happen. Mm-hmm. Task focused and assertiveness. On the other hand, it's important to get it right. If you want to get it right now, you got to slow it down to make sure the details get covered, even though you're still task focused. Obviously, on anything you're working on at any point in time, there's a balance to achieve. Okay, it's important to get along with people. Well, if we want to get along with people, we tend to be people-focused in that moment, because that's what we're getting along with. But we tend to get a little less assertive, because we're going to put our own needs aside to make others happy. And this is what you observe when people go to lunch. You want to go to lunch? Sure. Where would you like to go? Oh, I don't know. Where would you like to go? I don't know. Are you hungry? I don't know. Are you? Do we not know if we're hungry? We could figure this out. But what's happening there is we're putting our own needs aside to please somebody. It's part of getting along. If people are in that get appreciated mode, then they're still going to be focusing on people because that's where appreciation comes from, but they tend to be more assertive. They're going to put themselves out more, contribute. Ooh, you ever gone to this place for lunch? I know a great place. Everybody, let's go now. So all these behaviors, all these intents, getting it done, getting it right, getting along, getting appreciated, it's all part of us. But depending on where we are and who we're with, one of them can become more important than the other.
Sure.
If we got a big deadline, well, all of a sudden you're not as maybe friendly with your spouse because you have to really focus. You got to be direct. So think of it like clothing. You put on, if it's raining, you put on something. If it's sunny, you put on something else. And it's like that with people. All right, so that's the cooperation zone. So the next zone out is the caution zone. And this is when people are not getting what they need. So let's say I need to get something done. And I go to some of my team members and I find they use the balloon strategy of time management. It's when you move forward on a project like this.
Oh, we've all done that before.
So then I'm going to go, okay, people, here's what has to happen. I'm going to go into control. I'm going to try to take over to make it happen. So I'm going to become more assertive and controlling. If I'm focused on get it right and I ask people for information and they tell me, it's about 50, we think. About, you think? Then I'm going into those details that no one else is paying attention to. Mm-hmm. Perfection. If we want to get along, we're not sure it's happening, we go into approval, do things to make sure everything's okay between us. And if we want if we want appreciation, it's not happening, we go into attention. Do things to get people to notice. Mm-hmm. So that yellow zone, with the caution zone, is not automatically a problem, however. In fact, sometimes the yellow zone is the solution. Somebody takes control and takes charge of the meeting, so we actually get it done and move forward, right? Somebody covers the details. But if people really get stressed out, then we get into the danger zone.
Sure. Interesting.
And that's where the 13 behaviors that you mentioned happen.
Interesting. So there's a lot to consider here. We're not just talking about what's going on in here in our own minds. We're also talking about external influences. And on top of that, we also have to consider our goals and what are we actually trying to accomplish with this individual and how might they react? How might they push back? And depending on our circumstances at the time, it may change the way we react to that situation. I definitely hear what you're saying because I've been in those spots where I'm trying to either get something done and I'll comply with whatever it is that person's saying, and there's other times where I'll push back and it's not in line with my agenda. Mm-hmm, yeah, mm-hmm. And that's definitely a very key point of understanding how to deal with these types of people. One of my favorite examples in here is the tank. I like the tank and the grenade. Not for no particular reason. I just think the terms are really fun. But now, Rick, can you briefly describe what is a tank, what is a grenade? Maybe we can go in a couple other ones.
We go around the lens. We do a walk on the wild side.
Let's do it.
All right, so we'll start out in the get it done quadrant because they don't have time to waste.
Sure.
This is the other quadrants. All right, so if things are out of control and I'm perceiving that maybe you're an obstacle or taking tangents, all of a sudden I can become a tank. I can't believe I'm seeing you. You must be a genetic mistake. You've been working on this 2 weeks. You're already 4 weeks behind. Now, here's what we're going to do. Parliament is dissolved. I'm in control. Any questions? Good. They've got radar looking for people. They find someone, boom! They can rip you apart personally, and the biggest irony, it's nothing personal. And it's not. It's just that you're in the way of an end result, so you have to be eliminated.
Right.
A tank attack is basically a declaration of martial law, control, but to produce action, to make something happen. But control has other expressions, especially if things get suppressed. What if I resent you about something? What if, you got the promotion I think I should have gotten? No problem.
Yeah.
We're at a meeting, you stand in front of your peers, and I say stuff like, hey, Yuri, I got a great idea. Let's play horse. I'll be the head. You just be yourself. Oh, don't get all emotional. Can't you take a joke? That's sniping. It could be to your face. It could be behind the back. I'm not getting mad. I'm getting even. If you add a bunch of ego and knowledge to the recipe and that get it done control zone, then you easily get know-it-all behavior. That's right, I know 99%. I'm happy to tell you how much I know for hours on end. Dominate meetings, go on and on and on. Of course, I'll never listen to your clearly inferior ideas. Now, if you compare know-it-all to tank, a know-it-all is nowhere task-focused. Somebody who has become a tank is not going to waste a minute to impress us because they don't really care at all what we think or feel, which is why they're so ruthless. They just want to make it happen yesterday. But when people go know-it-all on you, now you got ego that you're dealing with also, and so they're going to waste all this time telling you how much they know. But the problem is, and this is the defining characteristic, just because somebody knows a lot doesn't mean they're a know-it-all. It's the unwillingness to hear what others have to say. Okay, let's shift mental gears here. So let's go to the get it right area of the lens. So from there in get it right, I see perfection. I could see what is. I look at what could be. What could be doesn't measure up, or what is does not measure up to what could be. And then I start feeling helpless about it. And that's how whining starts. Now, when people whine, they get radar like tanks. It's just whiner radar sounds like, boop, boop. Oh, there's a problem. Pick it up, put it in my bag. Boop. Oh, there's another one. Put it in the bag. And another one. Put it in the bag. And the bag gets so heavy, I can't take it. So I come to you. Here. Sign line 5. Now, when people are whining, they're basically feeling helpless. They're feeling the victim of the situation, circumstances. It could be they feel disempowered in relation to others. Or, ironically, sometimes they're doing it to themselves because they have this high standard of perfection that can't be met, and so that's what creates the helplessness.
Wow.
Now, negativity is similar. It's like a first cousin, but it's different. Negativity, whereas whining is helpless, negativity is hopeless. So they're just going to say, forget it. We tried it. Nothing ever changes. Every silver cloud has a dark lining. You try to suggest an idea, they say, pull. Boom, got that idea. It's got the arrogance of a know-it-all seduced by the dark side of the force.
Okay.
Because a know-it-all will tell you what they think and what how it should be, but the negative person just says nothing's going to work. Give up.
What's the point?
Yeah, exactly. Other people, in the face of that, will just go fine. Do it your way. Don't come crying to me when it doesn't work out. And from that point on, I say, now, that's nothing. Now, of course, you hear the same nothing, but from a different motivation. Because out of desire to get along, if you don't have something nice to say, I wouldn't want to hurt your feelings, so I say,
nothing.
I wouldn't want you to be mad at me, so I say,
nothing.
Exactly. But if you want something from me, I also want something from you, your approval. So I say, okay, sure. Oh yeah, happy to do that. Oh yeah, okay, no problem. Oh yeah, I could take that on. And then I'm suddenly overcommitted and things don't get done.
Yeah.
If I'm faced with a decision that could hurt somebody's feelings, then I'm going to say, let me think about it. Ask me later. Or maybe that's my final decision. I'm sure everybody's told the salesperson they'll think about it.
Oh yeah.
But you're not going to think about it. What you're doing is you don't want to hurt their feelings because you're in that get-along area of the lens at that moment.
Yeah.
All right, shifting mental gears again. So now we go to that get attention. Nobody cares! That's the problem world today! I don't want to bother! It's the government's fault! Did you notice me? I'm tough to miss. That's your grenade.
Yeah.
It's the tantrum. Now, the difference between tank and grenade, the tank should be in jail, grenade should be institutionalized. Actually, it's a level of intent. A tank means to do it. A tank is going to take aim, but they leave other useful people and office equipment standing. Whereas a grenade blows up in 360 degrees, and you hear all this stuff that has really nothing to do with the present circumstances. A tank attack is really a demand for action, whereas a grenade tantrum is a demand for attention. So with a tank, ultimately, we're going to move forward fast. Forward motion will de-escalate the attack. Something is happening. Whereas with a grenade, it's totally the opposite. We have to stop everything and just put out the fire.
Yep.
What you also get out of that attention area is another kind of sniper. This is friendly fire. This is people who like you, so they say, hey, I never forget a face, but in your case, I'll make an exception. Just kidding. I heard you lost your last job due to illness and fatigue. They got sick and tired of you. it's friendly put down humor, it's friendly gossip, it's teasing, it's all of that. It's not really intending to hurt anybody, but sometimes it can have some inadvertent side effects that are not positive.
Definitely.
Last but not least, you get think they know it all behavior, and that's when I think I know it all, but I really don't. But when words come out my mouth, they come back in both my ears, and I think this must be true. I heard it twice.
Or you read it on the web.
Or
you read it on the internet somewhere. That has to be true, right?
Absolutely. So these are the 10 original behaviors that we identified. And then we wrote a book, which is still out there, dealing with relatives, and we found 8 behaviors that relatives exhibited. However, and they had corollaries. For example, somebody's being a general of the family is somewhat equivalent to the tank.
Yeah.
Somebody who's being a rebel is somewhat equivalent to the grenade. Somebody who's being a nothing person is the mystery person. But there were 3 that really stood out that were not. That were beyond relatives, and so we added them to this 3rd edition.
Okay.
And one is the judge, and the judge is coming out to get it right perfection, but they're nitpicking, they're looking at the details, whereas whining and negativity has gone to the generalization. Everything is wrong, nothing's right. The judge is focused in to the minutia in a negative fashion.
Yeah.
In judging. Then you get right at the center of the lens where get it right meets get it done. On the assertive side, you get a part, like a combination of you made a judge with a tank, you get a meddler. Mm. Because the meddler has the judgment, but then the aggressiveness, they're going to do something about it. They know you don't know what you're doing, but you're going to help you dress or whatever. They're meddling.
Yeah.
So they've got that combination. Right at the bottom of the lens where get along meets get appreciated on the more people side, you get the martyr. Oh, I do everything for everybody. It's somewhat like yes behavior but it's more needy than yes behavior. They're doing things because they really need that appreciation in return.
That is a crash course in basically every type of behavior you go through the book. And Rick, when you're going through this, and I'm sure anybody who's listening right now is also doing this, they're either saying, "Am I like that? Did I ever do that to somebody else?" And we can all recall certain situations that we embody each one of these behaviors. It's definitely part of our, and it's not something to be ashamed of. I think it's something that is part of being a human, that we all have to deal with these types of situations. And it's curious because as you've been going through these, I noticed that there's people that are popping up in my head, at least, that are like, oh yeah, I know who that is. Oh, I know this one too. Oh, yep, I know that. Oh, the grenade. Oh man, or the sniper. Yeah, I know a meddler too. So I know we were constantly, and there's certain like defaults, and it's not. These behaviors aren't persistent. You can change them. You don't have to be you don't have to be stuck in one way. Like if you're constantly judging something, you just got to tweak your mindset, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Yep. So it's not, you're not stuck, and that's what I really want to stress is you're not stuck in these behavior modes, and you're not stuck in participating in one of these actions that you don't necessarily either approve of or you want to be a part of. You don't have to be that.
And you can help people. You can be an agent of change because we're, the beauty is you said we all have them within us, and that's part of the great thing. Here's what I think the most important thing is to become what I call a conscious communicator.
Yes. And
a conscious communicator is paying attention to the cause-effect relationship between what you do and what you get. And and the deck is stacked in your favor because when it comes to communication, you already really know how to communicate, and you have a zillion of opportunities every day to practice and observe. And so if you stay conscious, and then debrief yourself out of each interaction. Yes. It was good or bad. What worked? That's interesting. What have I never done with that person? What am I going to try next time? And do that little internal debrief. And then imagine yourself doing it the next time. You are setting yourself up on this momentum of exponential growth. And like anything you learn, all of a sudden it becomes automatic and unconscious. Exactly. And suddenly you're handling the tank without even thinking about it.
Right. And that's a beautiful way to negotiate in a business meeting. I've noticed, at least after doing rounds of negotiations with clients or speaking with other individuals like multiple times, after a while you're sort of figuring, and most of the time the other person's not even realizing what's happening. They're just on autopilot. Mm-hmm. But if you're conscious and you're aware of what they're doing, what their triggers are, what their behavior is, and how they're reacting to what you're saying, and like you said, debriefing yourself afterwards, the next time you meet, you'll be able to influence them so much more and effectively get, not in a bad way, but negotiate to a ground that's fair, that both parties get elevated, as opposed to somebody smashing somebody else's ego or damaging somebody else.
Definitely. Well, you're also going to prevent them, because you're going to start seeing things that you hadn't noticed before, where you realize, oh, this person is real, get it done, and I'm giving them every little detail. I probably should try telling them the bottom line up front, and then asking them how much they want to know,
right?
And even begin the conversation with, how much time do you have for this? In fact, I just had a patient tell me about her know-it-all boss, and she is more get it done and so minimalist. She tells her people to do it. She trusts them that they know how to do it and such, and her people tell her it's done, and she doesn't need to dig, and she trusts it's done. But her boss is kind of know-it-all-ish and get it right. And so I suggested that she needs to report a lot more detail than she normally would, and ideally use some sort of visual, whether it's on a flip chart or a piece of paper or whatever, because the difference in auditory communication and visual, auditory exists the moment you say it and it's gone. If we put up this coaster here, it stays here, and a little bit later it's still there, and a little bit later it's still there. And so, you could see multiple factors. This is why we say, I can see the big picture, because you're seeing all the factors. And so she tried that with her boss, and she couldn't believe what a positive response. It was the first time they didn't have like a little with each other.
That was an excellent growling impression, I must say.
Thank you.
But yeah, and that's absolutely right. If you just pivot and you know how to modify it, you're the one that has to be responsible for these behaviors. You're the one that has to maintain the sort of upper hand and all that. It gives you that extra edge of control, because then you're able to move the situation into a very comfortable spot where you're no longer being aggressive. You don't have to be aggressive, and every interaction moving forward is positive. And I love how you put it with the mindset. It's sort of like, everything, if you're a negative person, everything's negative, and that's not because everything's really negative. There's a lot of positivity out there. It's because you're perceiving it as everything is negative, and therefore, how can it be anything else if that's what you're perceiving? Exactly. It's a beautiful way to put it. Now, Rick, what are some, since we're on that note, and sort of changing that mindset and modifying your ability to perceive and identify the situation, what are some ways and strategies that we can shift our attitude to become better communicators, better negotiators, or better business people?
Well, I'd say, first of all, realize that you have a limited amount of attention, and you want to get your attention focused on communication. Because you already had to do it, and you got a zillion opportunities every day to practice. So the world is your laboratory. So you want to stay conscious. Second principle, there's feedback, no failure. There's no such thing in a failure in a communication. All communication works. It may be working perfectly to produce the result that you do not want, but it's perfectly working to do that. So you got to observe, all right? I mean, this is a true story. A long time ago, a friend of mine was picked up by another friend who drove a Peugeot automobile. So driver jumps out of the car, they stop at 7-Eleven, be back in a minute. 5 minutes goes by, he gets sick of waiting. Now, on a Peugeot, when the button is up, the door is locked. When the button is down, the door is open.
Oh, that's bizarre.
It's a little French humor to trap people in their cars, except the French. Maybe that's why Peugeots are no longer resold in America, because, we ain't stupid. But he does what anyone's do without knowing. He wants to get out. Tick, 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 tick. Maybe it's stuck. Tick, 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 tick. All right, this door is broken. I'll use the driver's side. Tick. 4 doors. 10 minutes later, still in the car. Now, he knows what he wants, but he's not paying attention. And if what you're doing is not working, you have a guarantee. It's not working. Anything else you do increases the likelihood of your success. I'll tell you personally, when I'm stuck in a situation, if I don't know what to do, I ask myself, all right, what's the last thing I really want to do right now? And what occurs to me, I force myself to do it, and I can't believe how many times that unlocks it and moves us forward. And that makes perfect sense, because it's the last thing you want to do. It's the thing you have not done, and so it's stuck with that person or that type.
Exactly.
So, all right, so remember, you have limited attention. There's no such thing as failure. It's feedback failure. You always want to pay attention. And in every communication, you should have a goal. Well, what do I want right now? What's my goal in this particular situation? And what's working and what's not working? So that's the cycle of paying attention. And then constantly be flexible. Know what you want, pay attention, and be flexible. Those three general principles, and recognizing that people have a limited amount of attention, that way when they're fixated on something and they're not seeing what you see as obvious, then you won't think they're crazy and go, God, I don't need this. You'll go, okay, their attention is over here. I just have to move it to where the part I already, or no. So that is on a big level. And then something else you said about, we talked about the pre-play.
Yeah.
You know how you hear a song and it takes you back, or you smell something. But you didn't do that on purpose, but you know enough about it to use it on purpose. Let's say we're about to leave the house, we're at the refrigerator, we're going to grab something to eat, and we remember, oh, my cell phone in the bedroom. So go to the bedroom to get our...
What was I there for again?
But you know what to do. Go back to the refrigerator and... Cell phone! Minds will be minds. They're always making associations. And the moment you touch that handle and thought about the phone, a link was made between the two, which is not permanent. But what makes a link really permanent is repetition. So the song plays over and over and over again. So consider this, that when we have an uncomfortable interaction with another person, our mind will show us reruns. Oh, they said that and I felt bad. They said that I felt bad, said that I felt bad. Well, what we're doing is basically creating an association, and the next time we see that person, we'll feel bad even more quickly because we've been practicing in our spare time. So minds will be minds, and you cannot let them repeat the way it was, or you're stuck in the past. What you have to do is go, all right, what do I want? What am I going to do next time with this person? And then go back to that situation and imagine doing something different. Like giving the detail to the boss, or starting out with how much time do you have for this conversation? Whatever it is, play it out. And then the next time you're there, you're more likely to do it. And this will be true for everything. Let's say you don't want to react to something. There's a certain button you have when people say that certain thing. Then you decide, what do I really need? And you can get that from all the world around you. Like I had a patient who needed to be more assertive when her boss was yelling. I said, and she couldn't be assertive anywhere in her life. I said, who do you think could do it the way you'd like? She goes, Katharine Hepburn. She'd show him. So I had her close her eyes, imagine being Katharine Hepburn, how she feel, how she think, how she view the world, and just practice being Katharine Hepburn internally. And then imagine that being with your boss and saying that, and you're being Katharine Hepburn. And we replay. I went with it a few times with her, but then gave her an assignment to keep doing it. And, first week she was 20% more comfortable, she said, and more assertive. Next week it was 30, 40, and a couple of months later, boss could yell, no problem. It didn't bother her. So you want to use your mind on purpose. That is a very important thing, because that will give you the... all right, so there's a strategy for all 13 of those behaviors. But ideally, you have to first go, what's the inner attitude I really need? If somebody says, hey, you must be a twin, no one person can be that stupid, and I react, oh, yeah, well, maybe you should sue your brains for non-support. And now I got two snipers going back. So I might need to go, okay, who imagine the person saying that, and I'm just calm and relaxed. Because the ideal when you deal with snipers is innocent and curious. You say, what do you mean by that? Is something going on? You want to give them the innocent look. And you're putting the spotlight on them.
Oh, yeah.
But we can go deep. We can go into any of these strategies if you want. But to answer your question, the biggest principle, know that there's limited amount of attention. Yeah. Always know that it's feedback, never failure. You got to know what you want, pay attention, and then be flexible and do that mental rehearsal. Yeah. And at that level, you'll just exponentially improve. You can't help it.
And you're absolutely right on that. With the mental rehearsal, I've actually been implementing a lot of this in my own life, and especially when I'm going into meetings, you actually psych yourself up. By the time I enter a meeting, I've already gone to that meeting at least 5 times in my mind. I already found my conclusion. I figured out all the avenues, all the points, all the different negative areas that I could have encountered during this whole presentation. And most of the time, it doesn't occur. Like most of the situations that I create and fabricate in my own mind, they don't even happen. Mm-hmm. But the fact that I'm ready for them and I'm ready to absorb that impact and all right, let's go and focus over there instead of dealing with this situation here. And that person, usually the person who I'm meeting with, really doesn't have that sort of, at least they've never even considered to sit down and actually go through. People are just on autopilot. They just go in there and sit down. It's all about the end goal and the mindset and how you enter that. And I think there was a book a while ago, or a movie they made into a book. I don't know if you're familiar with The Secret, or how to manifest anything, all of your desires.
I haven't read it, but I am familiar with the principles.
And that's basically what we're discussing here, but on a deeply psychological level.
Yeah.
Much more, this is way more scientific than that. That was just like, oh, think about it, and I'm going to be rich tomorrow. I just get paychecks, right? No. Yeah, in some ways, if you start visualizing, and we all know, as entrepreneurs, as people in business, we know visual representation of objects is pretty darn close to the actual physical representation of that object. The mental and the physical are so closely tied. We can visualize anything we'd like, and the result is right there, and somehow it manifests. And all it takes is us shifting our perception and shifting our mindset. These are all impressive and great ways and strategies to leverage when you're dealing with these types of people. Rick, this is excellent information. If you don't mind, can we go into what's your favorite behavior, and how do you mitigate? How do you deal with it? What's the number one?
Is nothing behavior, because I'm such a good nothing person, so I can relate to nothing.
Great.
That was a good thing with my daughter. I remember once, coming back from a seminar trip, and my wife says, "You're the communication expert. You deal with her." Okay, so what do we have to deal with now? Background: we had 4 Siamese cats. They had 3 cat boxes. They were quite a production facility. I didn't mind taking care of that, but if I'm on an extended road trip, somebody's going to have to pick up the slack, so to speak. So my daughter's supposed to do this, and she hasn't done it. She resists doing it.
Sure.
So we get home, and we're home 15 minutes. My wife says, "Well, have you talked to her yet?" Now, at the time, it was a Friday night. My daughter, who was about 14 and a half, was in her room with a couple other teenage friends. And when I looked at that context, I just had this funny intuition. This might not be the best moment to discuss cat boxes. I might run into unnecessary resistance. And that's an important thing with nothing people especially, is you want to wait for the right moment, because nothing withdraws from all intensity. So if you're all emotionally intense, all you're going to do is push that person into nothing. And nothing isn't just this. It becomes, so nothing withdraws. So you don't want to, and the other thing is, even if you're not all emotionally intense, if you're just kind of questioning too quickly, or have a time, some kind of time at your back, a deadline, so you don't really have enough time, it's going to automatically cause you to be a little more tense, and they withdraw from nothing. All right, so you got to wait for the right moment. So I go into my next day, things are just waking up Saturday. I walk into my daughter's room, I sit down, and I say, to which she says, to which I say, to which she says, "And what do you think you're doing here?" And I say, "Nothing. I don't know. Just gone all week. I haven't seen you. I noticed you were up. I thought, oh, she's my daughter. Maybe I should see her." Oh, okay. This is the sound of nothing people blending, which is establishing rapport. You don't want to underestimate the importance of that. You got to slow down to their level. Now, slowly the conversation starts to form. My daughter is realizing the conversation for me is going da-dun, da-dun, da. But then I guess she did, because she goes right for it. "I know I didn't do the cat boxes. I can't stand to do it." I don't see how you can stand to do it. I thought, that sounds like a good opening. I said, "Oh, first of all, look at their faces. You don't have to go to the bathroom like this. Do it for them." Or you know what I think sometimes? I just pretend it's 1849 and I'm panning for gold. Woo! Today I hit the mother load.
Well, you can't sell this gold, unfortunately.
I never thought of it that way, but now you do. I'll save it all for you. Sometimes the magic works, sometimes it doesn't. But the idea is that you got to slow down, come into rapport with them. You'll ask open-ended questions that cannot be answered with a yes, no, or a grunt. If they say, "I don't know," you say, "Guess, make something up. If you did know, what would it be?" And then give an expectant look like this. And try that. Go on a crowded elevator, pick out a stranger at random, and go. They tell you all kinds of funny things.
Yeah, they're like, "What?"
I'm kidding about the elevator, but I'm not kidding about the look. We all have an expectant look that naturally follows a question. You want to turn up the dial about another 15% on your expectant look and pause. And you could say, guess, make something up. You didn't know, what would it be? And it's amazing. 9 out of 10 people go, well, I guess, da-da-da-da, and they'll just tell you something. And then once you get that going. So that was always an easy behavior for me to deal with, because it was, I understand nothing from the inside out. And when you had mentioned earlier that we all do these in different places, I was thinking, and that's a real advantage, because when you understand it inside out, you know what that person needs in that moment. The ones that are more challenging, and I'd say the most challenging one for me was the grenade, the tantrum, because though I might be nothing in a more personal relationship, I would be much more very much in control, get it done control in a business relationship. So when you take a grenade in a business relationship, they're totally throwing things out of control, and nothing withdraws from intensity. So my two strongest areas made the grenade the arch nemesis. And so what I realized was that with an adult grenade, I'd be going, I don't need this crap. They should know better. Come on, they're acting like a child. And then I realized that with the child, a young child, I didn't have a problem with grenade behavior, because I always approached it as, okay, I'm going to see what's possible here, and I want to get them to learn and try to avoid this in the future, and so forth. And so I did the visualization, the internal, imagining over and over again, taking how I am and how I feel with the child, but transferring it to the adult. Because that's where I need, and then it was a breakthrough. It wasn't that tough to deal with.
So it's literally that you brought them down to a level, you broke it down to a level of understanding of that of a child, because effectively the tantrum is, for all intents and purposes, behaviors of a child. Repressed, rather, emotions that somebody hasn't dealt with or has no other way of dealing with these types of behaviors. They're never taught, they have no outlet for it. And you can't blame them for it. It just, they were raised this way. This is how they've been doing it their whole life. So it's been working their whole life, right? So they're going to continue on that path. And so if you imagine them in that and shift your perception of them and say, hey, you're just behaving like a child. How would I deal with it like that? And all of a sudden, you're gifted with the situation's completely resolved. It's so much better. Yeah, I love how you're approaching it. And in every situation, there's a way out. There's always a way for you to sidestep and get your way, or even find a mutual ground of a little bit of an understanding from both parties. The challenge that I find with a lot of my communication, and I'm sure everybody's dealing with this now, especially in the era of online chats, online emails, communicating without actually communicating. How does one deal with the communication through an email when, sometimes I'll interpret emails that they may be aggressive towards me, but I'm not really sure. Maybe they're missing syllables or something. I don't know what the deal is there. But there's emails that I get sometimes I can almost feel the elation through the email. But other times it's like I have nothing to work on. I literally it's the most bland email I've ever read. It was like reading a terms and conditions statement on somebody's business page, which you're welcome to read mine. I mean, it's nothing. It's like reading that. How do we interpret emails, and how do we get better at understanding that?
All right, so we have to go back in time to 1967, where a professor named Albert Morabian does an experiment. He makes a film of some people communicating. He then takes the soundtrack off the film, runs it to a synthesizer, leaves words incomprehensible, but tone, volume, and speed is intact. He then has a transcript prepared, it's actually said. He gathers a group of people, shows them the film, Then he plays soundtrack, no words, no images, just then he hands out the transcript, lets people read it. Most people think this is 3 different interactions. That's a business meeting. Those people are angry. These are obviously good friends. They were shocked to learn it's all the same interaction. He says, what do you believe is really going on? And based on their responses, he concludes that 55% of the meaning we make in a communication is based on how that looks to us. 38% is based on how that sounds to us. And 7% are based on the actual words that are spoken. Wow. And this is what I call the 55, 38, and 7. Now, we have expressions. Seeing is believing, 55%. Action speaks louder than words, 55%. Now, the percentages don't mean that one is really more important than the other. What they really refer to is what will happen when there's a mixed message.
Sure.
So, for example, we've all been a customer. Has somebody ever been customer serving you and they say, "Have a nice day"? Now, do you think they care about your day? No. The way it sounds does not match.
Right.
When there's a mismatch, we believe the higher number. Now, more often than not, the mismatch tends to come between how it sounds and what gets said. Usually how it sounds goes along with how it looks.
Right.
In the exception that somebody's doing it on purpose, like going, "Oh no, fine, do it your way," if they're like sarcasm, that kind of thing.
Right.
But more naturally, those two are together. Now, the important part of how it sounds, the 38%, is tone of voice. At the tone, people take it personally, whether it's about them or not. And so we could be feeling something that has nothing to do with the person we're interacting with, so naturally we suppress that. But then our emotional state our conscious mind is just going to pick the concepts we want to get across to each other that are encoded in the symbol system called words and language. But then how we feel can leak out a little bit through our tone. And all of a sudden people are totally ignoring your words. They're only responding to the tone.
Wow. Okay.
When it comes to rock, scissor, paper, words, tone crushes words and they're non-existent. So let's go to an email or any kind of writing situation. Now, I find this fascinating because I have been teaching communication for 30 years. And so I was in the pre-email era, and I was an early adopter right at the beginning. But we've been writing to each other for hundreds of years, and we didn't have all the confusion until the digital age.
Right.
So let's look at what's going on. Let's be conscious communicators here. All right, so in any written communication, we don't have how it looks, 55%. We don't have how it sounds, 38%. It's just a bunch of words on a page or a screen. What that allows us to do is hallucinate freely as to how we think the other person sounds when they say it. And our hallucinations will be based on our stress level, our blood sugar curve, everything we've got going on at that moment.
Huh.
Now, whenever you lose channels of communication like that, you're losing a lot of important information, but you're always given something in return. And what you get in return in a written communication is time is on your side.
Yeah.
It is not an interactive medium.
Yeah.
So, but this doesn't exactly explain the difference between the digital age and the old days. Well, come with me to a time of yesteryear when the earth was still cooling and we had to write with a typewriter. All right, so here's the drill. I don't think that piece of paper's straight. Hold on, let me straighten it out, okay? Okay. Nah, that's no good. Okay, get another piece of paper in there, straighten it out. You already did 2 emails in this amount of time. Correct, too many corrections, rewrite. There was so much time in the process that one of 2 things was going to happen. One is we might not bother, it was way too much work, so we're more likely to get interactive. And secondly, if we did bother, so much time would pass, we would arrive at other points in our blood sugar curve, we would read, we would reread, we would be thinking about it. But in comes the digital age, and part of seduction, it seems to be quick and easy, and we have a lot volume to deal with, so we tend to get into get it done area of the lens where we're just dealing with it. So we read quickly, we write quickly, we edit sparingly. Misunderstanding.
Yeah.
So that's what's going on, and what you have to always remind yourself is, I am hallucinating freely. I don't know how this person sounds. I am making it up. I may be right, I may be part right, I could be totally wrong, but it is my hallucination. That's where you've got to start with. And then from there, you got to make a decision. Should this communication continue in this format? Or should it go to a different format? And my advice to everybody of when to bail on email, okay, these are Rick's rules for when to bail on email. Number 1, if you suspect emotional content, if you think they're having a strong reaction or you're having a strong reaction to something you're hallucinating about, pull the ripcord, bail on email, you'll save yourself so much time and trouble. Secondly, if you write something and you have a little bit of a concern how they might take it, definitely treat that as a sign to pull the ripcord and bail on email. Those are the 2 major ones to think of. Now, if you stay in writing, then time is on my side. I should not respond immediately.
Yep.
Because I had a book proposal I put in recently to a major publisher, and my editor left right after I gave the proposal, so I was in between limbo state with an editorial assistant, and then they assigned a new editor to look at it. And along the way, now they gave me a list of 10 questions to answer that they wanted the proposal, which became 51 pages of marketing and so forth and so forth. All right, so along the way, they started asking me questions, but everything they asked me is already in the proposal. And now finally I get another question, do you have a speaking schedule and numbers? And I'm like, page 35 through 38, it's got my speaking schedule for the next months, how many people are in the audience, whether they're back of room sales, and that. So in that case, I did want to answer, but I just decided to give myself 24 hours to figure out how can I tell the person to read the proposal in a good, positive manner. Mm-hmm. And so, and I did, and it all worked out for the best. So always remember time is on your side, and you want to take that time to really think of it. And then there's some other things you can do, because have you ever reread an email the next day?
Oh, totally. And it sounds
there
different.
Are sentences in that email that were not in there the day before.
Exactly. Yeah, totally different perception.
Exactly. And that's because email elves sneak in at night and add to the email. No, it's because what happens is we read something, we get triggered, we go off in the thought we keep reading unconsciously.
Yeah.
So you got to compensate for that. In yourself, it's read it out loud. Then you won't miss anything. In your reader, what you want to do is, first of all, much more spacing. Don't follow the rules of normal grammar for paragraphs. Anytime the thought changes, skip a line. Mm-hmm. Because I always suspect if I have 3 sentences in a row, I have to suspect the third sentence will be obscured by the thoughts generated by the first 2. So more spacing. The very first line in the email should be a statement of intent. What's the purpose? And now this is a humongous one. This is one of those things that if you really pay attention to speaking your intent, you save yourself a lot of trouble. And you always know it's time for intent if you don't want people to misunderstand what's coming. So what I would see a lot with couples, let's say, is intent would be positive. Let's say one person's upset, they want to clear the air. So they go to their partner, but they don't speak their intent. They just say, I was upset the other day when he said da-da-da because before they get any further, their partner hears a sound in their mind like this. We are under attack. This is not a drill. But if we speak intent, we say, I love you, I care about you, I hate that something blocking our communication, I'd like to clear the air. Now they know where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Home is not where you go when you're tired of being nice to people. So that's anytime you don't want people to misunderstand. So the first line of an email really should be a statement of intent. What do you want from this person? And in my publishing example, it was like, I'm happy to give you whatever you want and need. That was the statement of intent. So I'm attaching this proposal because on page 35 and 38 you have a complete breakdown. So, and that's what I mean by statement of intent. More paragraph spacing, and I would suggest also before you hit send, read it aloud to yourself. And what you want to listen for is secondary messages in your tone. Mm-hmm. So let's say somebody suggests an idea to me at work, and I think it's a good idea, but we got to talk to the union about that. Mm-hmm. So when I read my message, and if I hear myself say, yeah, it's a good idea, but we'll have to talk to the union about that. If I hear that level of tone, not good.
Right.
At all.
Right.
And in that case, you have to be more specific and write further. Never. In fact, this is why it's so easy for humor to backfire, because a lot of times humor is the difference between what you say and how you say it. Yeah. But you can't depend on people to hear it in the tone in which you mean it.
Yeah. Sarcasm transmitted through virtual means rarely works. I've done a couple of examples where I said sarcastic remarks to friends or sometimes even clients on some occasions, and it totally backfired. I was like, oh wow, that was not at all what I meant. You're like moons away, but the way they interpreted it was really negative. And it totally ruined the relationship. So you have to get on the call and be like, look, forget it. I tried hitting the undo button before I sent it. It didn't work. Yeah.
So ambiguity is not going to work. I've had text messages too where somebody said something, and my response has to be, because I know I'm hallucinating. Are you insulting me?
Yeah, what? What are you trying to say?
Yeah.
And then, Rick, that is beautiful. What a great point. All the time, this happens on a daily basis, where you'll get an email and you're just like so frazzled at the moment, and you're just reading it like, God, what does this person want? Why are they emailing me right now? What do they want from blah? You know, and then you're dealing with this internal battle. It's me. It's not them. They're asking me a question. And I think I'm guilty of this in some of our communication even, unfortunately. But when I get, if you're really stressed out, you're in a bad spot, whatever it is, you're interpreting that as based on what you're feeling, not based on what that person's asking you. You're not even listening. You're not even reading it. It's just like, they're emailing me again. It's like, what do they want? And then what I've been starting to do, and this has been a world of difference. I'll walk away. Like, I'll literally walk away, go for a walk, meditate on what this person said, and ask myself, is it reasonable? Is it in line with what they want and what we discussed? And this just happened to me the other day. I was working on a proposal with a client, and it was like maybe 40 emails. I'm not even kidding. The thread's like ridiculously long. 40 emails back and forth for a week. We were going on this, and we got on the call. We discussed this and that. He sent me this laundry. It was like this long laundry list of proposals and things that he wants included in the contract. So finally, I'm at a point where I'm like, I just had to walk away from it because I was so overwhelmed with him. And I came back and I reread the email. I'm like, well, this is exactly what we discussed over the phone. I'm like, he's not asking anything different than what I already told him I'd offer him. So it's identical to what we discussed. And so I'm like, all right, well, I have no problem doing this now. But before, when he sent it the first time I read it, I was so pissed off. The second time I read it, I was like, well, no big deal. I put it in the contract. He signed and delivered, and it was perfect. Now we're in an agreement, and everything's good to go.
That's great.
And I think this has to do a lot with our own ability to, as you mentioned, the convenience of digital communication. And this happens a lot with Skype or text messaging because it's so fast. You get in the zone, and you're just emotionally triggered or whatever, and like especially with like Skype, this happens a lot where you're going back and forth with somebody. You can't walk away because technically it's almost like having a face-to-face conversation. You can't just walk away from them. So
we switch to another form. You could say, let's turn on video. Or
exactly. And that's exactly right. So what I've been implementing is I just pick up the phone and call them. Why deal with this? Why put yourself through additional? I know you'll get more done over the phone or a video chat like what we're doing now.
Yes.
You'll get more done because you'll actually be able to see the tone. You'll see the expressions. Rick, I'm so mad at you right now. You'll get you'll get every detail, and that's like you're absolutely right with that. You have to get to a channel that's more in line with being human. That's it. Like you can't communicate virtually without communicating at any level, really. It's just a poor way of communicating. It's good for getting platonic messages across or tasks across.
Yeah, facts. Yeah.
But not.
It's not for discussing or clarifying.
Not for emotional discussions or things that are going to be heated. Yeah, you're going to miss out on a lot. So, well, definitely great insight there, Rick, and I could not agree more. And I think this is something that we can all implement on our daily routine is get an email, and they're not expecting a response right away. You don't have to respond. And we wrote an article, actually, I think a couple weeks ago, on why you need to avoid your email during the day, period. Look at it either once in the morning, once at night, and let yourself reflect on those messages before you respond. And if you notice, most business professionals, like a lot of CEOs or company owners or people who are very busy, you won't get a response for weeks. And the reason is not only are they busy, but they need to think about what it is that they're taking the time and convenience to think about what it is that you're saying to them, what it is that you're offering them. So definitely agree with you there. Thank you so much for that insight. Now, Rick, we're getting close to time here. I just want to do one last thing. If you can give us like one, I guess, rule of thumb, big takeaway, sort of the ultimate truth, if you will, in communicating effectively or dealing with people that are just you can't deal with anymore.
I think the ultimate truth is something there where we started, and it's know what you want, pay attention, flexible. And and one thing you want is to turn the world into your laboratory and then keep paying attention and know there's no failure, just feedback. And then do the mental, take responsibility for your mind, to use your mind on purpose.
Great.
If we let it go, it's like a garden hose. You turn on the water and it's just flopping around. But if you grab the hose at the end, you water the garden, you can grow what you want. And you can grow the behaviors you want and the attitudes you want in your mind. And the bottom line is you're going to be doing it anyway. You're not going to stop doing it. You want to just make sure you're doing it that's taking you in the direction you want, which is evolving and not being stuck in the past.
Absolutely.
So know what you want, pay attention, be flexible, feedback, not failure, use your mind on purpose.
Great. Excellent insight. That is, I think everyone can take a lesson from that. Rick, if we want to learn a little bit more about your books, your courses, your website, where can we find this information?
Well, I think the first thing to consider for yourself is how am I as a learner? What do I like? For some people it's a book. For others it's an audio. For me personally, I love audios, so I can consume them like crazy.
Yeah.
Books will take a lot longer.
Like a podcast?
Or you like interaction and video. So there's the book, People You Can't Stand. On my website, and I'm sure you'll put links here, there's the audio. It's a full day seminar. We cover all the behaviors and all the strategies in detail, as well as meetings and email, much more than we were able to cover today. So that's for our audio listeners. And then if you want a video and interaction, there's the Conscious Communication University online course, where there are 14 classes. Each one, I'd say, takes you 30 minutes. It's about 7 hours of video training altogether. Within each class, there are 4 parts. Part 1 is live Dr. Rick, where I will do a live program talking about whining, going over the strategy of whining, let's say. Then you go to Coach Rick, which is a 2-minute video, tells you the mental muscles you're developing by dealing with this behavior, that there's something in it for you attitudinally. Like with a sniper, you develop tergum lentis, thick skin. You learn how to let things bounce off of you. That's what they're teaching you. And then from there you go to the lab, and there's a bunch of professors. There's Professor Bologorozko's a disembodied floating head, and he's got his threat assistants, lefty and righty. And they will usually, and there's also Professor McFly, who's a fly on the wall that reminds you to pay attention to communication. And they usually set up a skit. In the case of whining, Professor McFly will take you to the North Pole, and you'll see how Santa deals with his whining head elf Pinky and gets him to stop thinking everything's wrong, but really start problem solving. And then from there, it's time to play the Conscious Communication Game Show, where you can test your knowledge with fun questions and answers like, okay, the 2 factors that affect your communication most are 1, alcohol and poor judgment, 2, whether you chose truth or dare, or 3, context and relationship. And the questions are comical on purpose, and there's all kinds of voiceovers and audience reactions and such, because it's the idea is to walk you through the learning points and have you get it. The feedback's been tremendous. People have been enjoying it. And I definitely recommend that people take it in a partnership. I'd even give them a discount to have 2 people together, because then what you do is you download your notes, and there's assignments, things to pay attention to, things to try, and you want to get together with your communication partner once a week, commit to doing a few classes, and then what'd you notice this week? And that's it. What did you notice? And this is what my co-author and I did. This is how we changed everything. We met once a week for an hour. What did you notice this week? What did you try? What worked? What didn't work? What are you going to do next week with that person? And you have that debrief, and then you're just exponentially being a better communicator. And you're making a difference, because anytime you take somebody out of that red zone, you're not only doing yourself a favor, you're doing them a favor. They were all stressed out. And you're doing everybody else a favor downstream who would have encountered them.
Right.
And frankly, the world is just one red zone reaction after another, and the macrocosm what countries do with each other is a reflection of the microcosm what we do right here with the people we can't stand. Peace as a collective is all of our individual responsibility.
Yeah.
So go out there and be a conscious communicator.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you so much, Rick. We will put all the links in the WP Soar website. You'll be able to check out all of Rick's work there. Rick, thank you so much for being here with us today. It has been an absolute pleasure. I've learned a tremendous amount, and I'm sure everybody I'm going to recommend this podcast for all of my friends and family, because they absolutely need to listen to this. This is things that people need to hear. So with that, that's Rick Brinkman for you, everybody. Thank you so much for being here, and hopefully we can see you again next time.
Thank you.